Even though we could explain some of these sightings, there were many unexplained events which caused scientists to scratch their heads and which still remain unanswered today.
For some, these inexplicable sightings fueled concerns that the United States military was developing a radical piece of aerospace technology, something that behaved and looked like a UFO that could fly undetected into Russian airspace. And the Russian fears were well-founded. This is stealth, a quantum leap in aerospace technology. The Americans had built an invisible plane.
If you took one or two looks at that aeroplane and you saw how strange the shape was, it wouldn't take you very long to figure out that they were aiming at a very, very low level of radar cross-section. What was done with the first real stealth program was to produce something that had the radar signature of a small shotgun pellet or perhaps maybe a small bird.
My view is that it was advantageous for the Americans to keep up this kind of hype regarding UFOs. We guessed it was policy to conduct a campaign of misinformation as far as the general public was concerned.
Stealth was an enormous breakthrough, and nobody out in the wider world really believed it was possible. Nobody could even imagine that it was possible to do.
The Americans had won the technological race. Stealth was a decisive instrument in the Cold War. Secrecy was vital, and the US were able to hide the existence of stealth from Soviet surveillance for more than 10 years between 1977 and 1988. But stealth couldn't begin to explain the series of alleged alien encounters which were about to shock the American Southwest. The UFO story had come to ground in a very sinister fashion. This is New Mexico, an area that has witnessed UFO sightings since the 1940s. But in the early 70s, a series of horrific events took these sightings to another level, when aliens appeared to be attacking cattle. Ranchers began to find livestock with terrible injuries lying dead on their grazing plains.
The rectum had been partially removed. The eyes were bulging out. I was horrified at the thought of what could do this in broad daylight.
I really did believe something strange was going on. We had one up north where we believed the animal was paralyzed and was alive when it was being mutilated.
I'm on my way to meet Edmund Gomez, a cattle rancher from Dulce, New Mexico, a town close to Los Alamos, where the atomic bomb was developed. We met up and headed out to a desolate corner of his ranch. Where are we going? Where are you taking me to?
I'm taking you to our animal graveyard. Normally we would bury carcasses that would die from disease or from natural causes, but during the cattle mutilations that we had, we never buried any of the animals, so in case we ever needed any body parts, you know, in the future, especially the bones.
The mutilations themselves took place over quite a time period, didn't they?
Yes, they, on our ranches from 1976 through 1982, approximately.
When you found a mutilated cow, typically what kind of wounds would you find on the animal?
The rectum had been cored out, the lower lip had been removed, and the reproductive tract also had been removed. The organs that were removed precisely without spilling of any blood, and it was very, very neatly done.
Many of the ranchers believed the cattle mutilations were the result of UFOs, that aliens were dissecting the animals for experimentation.
Usually when you find an animal that dies of a disease or natural causes, the scavengers will attack the animal and attack the fleshy parts that they can, that are easy to tear into. And this was not torn flesh.
But for Gomez, there were other clues.
We saw this light kind of flying over our pastures, and all of a sudden it kind of just came to a standstill. It looked like it was saucer-shaped, but had two decks, and had two sets of lights on it, flashing one on top and one down towards the bottom. When you look at them, you think, well, gosh, that looks like the typical flying saucer. When all of a sudden the lights inside the cockpit of this vehicle went on, and when the lights went on, I could see the props of a chopper.
And as Gomez tells me, he has his own theories about the fate of the targeted animals.
They would put ropes or chains around the legs of the animal and lift them up and haul them off. Somewhere. Do their thing, come back, bring them back, and not lay them down, but drop them. Because we found several animals that had broken legs, broken backs, broken hips, and so forth.
And why dump the cow, leave the carcass here?
We felt that that whoever was doing this did it and brought it back and said, we're doing this and there's nothing you can do about it. There were a lot of consistencies with the way that they were harvesting these animals.
For Edmund Gomez, there are many unanswered questions. He wants the cattle mutilations, which put him and his family out of the ranching business, reinvestigated. Well, I think Gomez's hunch that this was some sort of covert testing activity was bang on the money. From the way the cows were mutilated, from the organs that were removed from the cows, it seems very clear that this was some kind of covert testing, covert monitoring program of some kind of contamination in that region. It also seems very clear that someone is trying to put in some kind of linkage between this